Hey guys, welcome back to the Silverback Show, and we're continuing our conversation about nature versus technology. Also the bigger question, how is it done in nature and why nature? So if we look at the word discovery, discovery is one of the most exciting things about the hero's journey. And the hero's journey is one of the most exciting aspects of human beings awakening to self-awareness and self-consciousness. It's why we all love to travel and go see different places and journey outside of our little boxes, and why we have a really hard time with the Taoist philosophy of being able to be content with what you can see out your own window. So the hero's journey is something that I read in Joseph Campbell's work, and essentially what it does is extrapolates the inner process of individuation, the coming to individuation, coming into the self and becoming a complete individualized self. And the only way for a human being to become a complete individualized self is to go into nature and slay the dragon, to go into the nature within ourselves and to find our own demons, our own beasts, our own darkness, and come to embrace that. So the hero's journey, going into the woods and dealing with the wolf or the bear, the Loch Ness monster, the tiger, the dragon, and slaying the beast and coming home a man. Going into the woods, into the forest as a boy, and coming back a man. In different traditions, it's different kind of stories and different kinds of mythological journeys. Another example of self-discovery through nature is cross-culturally multiple indigenous societies have some form of this or another, where an adolescent male goes and spends time in some kind of deprivation state until he finds his token animal, and he becomes the eagle. He spiritually, in the dream state, in his consciousness, learns to commune and become one with the eagle, and maybe he's soaring, and he learns how to soar, and he learns to find a different kind of vision. It's the vision quest. The hero's journey is always accompanied by the vision quest. Or maybe it's a more drier climate, and he connects with the lizard, or he connects with the bear, or he connects with the silverback. The beginning of childhood, I always like to bring this back to some aspect of childhood, because there's where our salvation lies in terms of reuniting the evolutionary brain development with its connection to nature. So when we were kids, we would go out into the canyons as boys, and we would just spend lots of time in the springtime finding puddles of water and watching pollywogs turn into frogs, and we would identify these pollywogs and we would give them names, and we would create all kinds of stories with them. Fast forward to famous sociobiologist E.O. Wilson's work, his lifelong work. And one of the aspects of his sociobiology wisdom is the idea of discovery and how exciting discovery is. My children, for 6 years, we went up into the country for, I don't know, between a month to 3 months. And since they were home educated, we could go whenever we wanted. And on this property where we got away in the countryside, there were vast great trees all around. There was this giant wild meadow, and behind the A-frame there was a pond, and this pond was a pretty large pond, and it had, by the time we were on this property, it had evolved into quite a complex pond, and the kids would go out there on their kayaks and find snakes, find frogs, and find turtles, wild turtles. Now, I can tell you that the older my kids got, the more their memories of that pond became a crucial aspect of their childhood that they had fond memories of, and they all want to have their children have that same kind of experience. And that ties in with E.O. Wilson's work and the nature conservation movement, because we have to be wise about putting aside 50% of our land and seas and waterways for the opportunities for our children to explore and find biodiversity in nature that links them to some parts of their subconscious and primitive past, and links them to other aspects of their consciousness, which makes them much more better human beings because they become aware of the other. So for very, very selfish reasons, let's analyze these things and let's make them as sexy as possible instead of as doomsday as possible. So forget the doomsday scenario. Let's just look at a couple aspects of where we're at with the need to preserve huge tracts of land for allowing wild nature to do its thing, because without doing that, for example, we wouldn't have the Sequoia National Forest, we wouldn't have the Redwood National Forest, we wouldn't have butterflies by the bazillions in some places in the world. And we also wouldn't have an opportunity for our children to explore and find something outside of the TV and outside the computer and outside of their interior living spaces, which they spend more and more of their childhoods in. So there's very, very important critical connection to family life and child life and self-discovery through the discovery of other living beings and living creatures in nature that cannot be replaced. And that's it. We don't need to go much further than there. Most of you have an understanding that that's why you take your vacations and take your children to the seashore, take your children to the river. Of course, there's other reasons too. But one of the biggest reasons is that we get away from the stresses and strains of civilized living, and we get away from just being surrounded by human beings, concrete, glass, and technology. That is biodiversity. That is opening up to other sentient life. That is nature. Nature inside connected with nature outside. On this getaway place that I took my family, and my twin brother took his family, and we were surrounded on the other side of the river by federal forest land. There was 113 homes in this entire valley, and our next door neighbor was 40 acres away. That's a pretty powerful experience of quietude and solitude that balanced out the city life that my children were growing up with. And then there were animals and horses. And the indigenous peoples of the Americas received one of the few mixed messages or blessings that they got from the European was horses, and horses became not God, but horses became a token spirit for various tribes in the Americas, and this development of this special relationship between man and horse, it's just different than man and dog and man and cat. Man and horse connects man to a more wild spirit. Of course, that spirit is tamed by man, and therein lies also a deep, profound relationship. But it is the discovery of a conscious connection with another living being. And anybody who's been around horses understands that the heart-mind center of the human being connects with the heart-mind center of the horse in order to find this harmony and balance. And when you get in this harmony and balance with a horse, it's a magical thing. And some of you may have experienced that with your dogs, and that's also a wonderful thing. And it's wonderful because your dogs pull you outdoors, and your dogs pull you to take them under the night sky or under the morning sky or under the midday sky. And they also run and they chase things, and they get you connected to the chase. And it's a thrilling thing. And if you were as fortunate as I was when I was a boy to have had a dog that you were allowed to take into wild places, as I was, and it wasn't my dog, it was my friend's dog, and his name was Max, and he was this Irish setter. And as long as I combed him and cleaned him and kept the burrs and the bramble out of his red, hairy Irish setter, thick body, I was good to take him anytime with me. And Max and I had a bond and made my time in nature that much more powerful. And one of the powerful things that was happening, now of course I have to also, guys, link you back to myself being a twin, and therefore twins are born married in the womb, and there's a sharing of consciousness in twins where there's telepathic connection, and my twin brother and I had this telepathic connection, and that telepathic connection made me somewhat open to the telepathic, empathic abilities with other animals that I developed in my relationship with Max, in my relationship with the hummingbird, in my relationship with the heron, in my relationship with the red-shouldered hawk of my canyons. And that's very, very important. It's very, very important when we talk about spirituality, when we talk about deep, profound religious experience. In fact, one of the things that I share with adults who want to regain that childhood connection with nature is go into nature with an intention of contemplating having a telepathic communication with other sentient beings. Just reflect on that for a little bit. Telepathic communication with other sentient beings. I'm down at the seashore. I've been here 30 years. For 20 some years, I would go in the ocean every day after a run, after my yoga, my exercise. I'd go in, swim in the ocean. And all year long, without a wetsuit, so sometimes in the middle of freezing winter. And after I just swim a little bit, I would turn on my back and float. And imagine pre-dawn floating in the sea, or early morning floating in the sea with the mist and the fog opening up to pelicans just dive bombing for fish all around you. And those pelicans were then floating, bobbing, and I was floating, and I would only use my eyes to connect with that very primitive eye of the pelican. And over 30 years of writing haiku and sitting at the seashore and having aha moments with telepathic communication with living beings and other intelligence, I developed a pretty special relationship with some birds and with the dolphin. And I would have very, very magical moments where dolphins would come to communicate with me, and I am passing that on to you guys. It's innate in all human beings. It just needs to be redeveloped, and going to primitive places of wild nature is where it's developed, and going with the creative openness of the adventure, the explorer, the hero's journey. Go there with an idea of opening up to other intelligences in wild nature, and what that does for you and what that'll do for your children is open up something that is very, very vital at a time when 99.9% of our consciousness is being given to our technology. Okay, I'm past the 15-minute mark, and that's my commitment to the world, to try to keep it to 15 minutes. Namaste. Enjoy the journey. Enjoy the hero's journey. Enjoy, as E.O. Wilson talks about, the discovery of others. Namaste.